She shared her corn with a famine Apache woman. At dawn, hills echoed with war cries on her behalf. The summer sun beat down mercilessly on the valley of the Gila River, where drought had withered the maize fields to brittle stalks. Sarah. Blackwood wiped sweat from her brow, her calloused hands stained with earth. At 23, she had already known more hardship than most. After her parents died from fever 2 years ago, she had maintained their small homestead alone, a rare female settler in this unforgiving territory of Arizona, 1872. Sarah's nearest neighbors were 5 miles away, the military outpost to the east and the Apache reservation to the west. Relations between settlers and the Apache had been tense since the government had forced many bans onto reservations, but the region had known relative peace in recent months. As dusk approached, Sarah gathered what little corn she had managed to harvest. The drought had been cruel, but she had enough to last through winter if she was careful. A sound caught her attention, the soft crunch of footsteps on dried grass. Sarah turned slowly, her heart pounding. An Apache woman stood 20 paces away, a small child clinging to her skirts. The woman's face was gaunt, her eyes hollow with hunger, yet dignified. She carried no weapon, only a small pouch. She spoke in broken English. "Water," she said, gesturing to her child. "Please." Sarah hesitated. Stories of Apache raids had circulated among settlers for years, though she had never experienced one herself. The woman before her didn't look threatening, just desperate. "Come," Sarah said, gesturing toward her cabin. Inside, Sarah filled a cup with water from her barrel. The Apache woman accepted it with trembling hands and helped her child drink first. When Sarah offered bread and some of her precious corn, the woman's eyes widened. "I am Nasha," the woman said after eating. "This is my son, Taklashim." "I'm Sarah," she replied. Through halting English and gestures, Sarah learned that Nasha's husband had been killed by soldiers 3 months earlier. Her band, weakened by hunger and pursued by the military, had scattered. Nasha had become separated from her people 2 days ago. "Where are you going?" Sarah asked. "North, to find my brother's people." Nasha pointed toward the mountains. 2 days walking. Sarah knew that journey would be nearly impossible for a starving woman and child. "Stay tonight," she offered, surprising herself. "Rest." As darkness fell, Sarah prepared a pallet on the floor for her guests. She noticed the intricate beadwork on Nasha's clothing, the careful way she tended to her son despite her exhaustion. In the stillness of the night, Sarah thought about her own loneliness, the isolation of her existence. She had accepted letters from potential suitors arranged by the preacher's wife, but had found no connection in their words. Here was Nasha, so different from her, yet sharing the same human struggle to survive. Outside, an owl called into the darkness. Sarah drifted to sleep, wondering what tomorrow would bring, unaware that her simple act of kindness would soon ripple through the valley in ways she could never have imagined. Morning arrived with hoofbeats. Sarah woke suddenly, heart pounding. Through the small window, she spotted dust clouds rising from the east, riders approaching. She recognized the blue uniforms of cavalry soldiers. "Nasha," Sarah whispered urgently, shaking the woman awake. "Soldiers coming." Fear flashed across Nasha's face as she clutched her son. Sarah's mind raced. Harboring reservation escapees could bring severe punishment, but something in her refused to surrender these 2 vulnerable lives. Under the floor, Sarah decided, pulling back the small rug and revealing a shallow storage space she used for preserving vegetables through winter. "Quickly!" Just as Nasha and Taklashim disappeared into the hiding place, a sharp knock rattled the door. Sarah smoothed her skirt, took a deep breath, and opened it. Lieutenant James Foster stood on her threshold, flanked by 4 mounted soldiers. At 30, Foster had a reputation for ruthless efficiency and Apache management. "Miss Blackwood," he said, removing his hat. "Pardon the intrusion. We're tracking Apache fugitives from the San Carlos reservation." "I haven't seen anyone," Sarah replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. Foster's eyes narrowed slightly. "A woman and child, spotted heading this direction yesterday." I've been tending my fields all day, Sarah said. Haven't noticed anyone passing through. Foster dismounted and stepped closer. Mind if we look around? For your safety, of course. Sarah's pulse quickened. I appreciate your concern, Lieutenant, but I'm quite safe. Nevertheless, Foster insisted. We have our orders. The soldiers methodically searched her property, checking the barn, root cellar, and surrounding area. Sarah stood in the doorway, every muscle tense as Foster entered her cabin. He walked the perimeter of the single room, boots thudding on the wooden floor. When he approached the rug, Sarah spoke. I received your letter last month, she said abruptly. Foster paused, a hint of color rising to his face. He had been among her potential suitors, writing the most persistent letters. I meant to respond, she continued, but the harvest has kept me occupied. Foster cleared his throat. No apology necessary, Miss Blackwood. Perhaps when I return from this patrol, we might discuss it further. Sarah forced a smile she didn't feel. Perhaps. Outside, a soldier called that they'd found fresh tracks heading northwest. Be careful, Miss Blackwood, Foster said, replacing his hat. These Apache aren't like the peaceful ones. They're renegades, dangerous. After the soldiers departed, Sarah waited a full hour before releasing Nasha and Taklishim from their hiding place. The boy was remarkably quiet, understanding even at his young age the necessity of silence. They will return, Nasha said gravely. The blue coats always return. Sarah knew she was right. By helping them, she had crossed a line there was no returning from. We leave tonight, she decided. I have a cousin near the Colorado Territory. We can seek refuge there until it's safe for you to find your people. As they gathered supplies, Sarah noticed Nasha tying something to the cabin door, a small deerskin pouch. Protection, Nasha explained. And message. For my people, if they come looking. Sarah didn't fully understand, but nodded. By sundown, they would need to be far from this place, a journey fraught with danger, but necessary for survival. They traveled by night, keeping to ravines and thickets, away from established trails. Sarah led her old mare, loaded with essential supplies, while Nasha carried Taklishim. The moon cast silver light across the desert landscape, transforming familiar terrain into something mysterious and ancient. Their progress was slow. What should have been a 3-day journey would likely take 5. Sarah had left a note claiming family illness in case anyone came looking, but she knew Foster would be suspicious. On the second night, as they rested in the shadow of a sandstone formation, Nasha spoke. Why you help us? Many white eyes fear Apache. Sarah considered the question. My father taught me to judge people by their actions, not by what others say about them. She paused. And I know what it's like to be alone. Nasha nodded slowly. My husband, Nantai, he say some white eyes have good hearts. I did not believe. Not all soldiers are like Foster either, Sarah added. My brother served with a captain who respected the Apache, tried to understand your ways. Understanding is rare flower in desert of fear, Nasha replied. Their conversation was interrupted by Taklishim's soft whimper. Despite their careful rationing, food was running low, and the child was hungry. There's a creek ahead, Sarah whispered. We can rest there tomorrow, try to catch fish. By dawn, they reached the creek, a thin ribbon of water cutting through the arid landscape. As Sarah prepared a small fire in a sheltered hollow, Nasha fashioned a fishing spear from a branch with remarkable efficiency. Hours later, with 3 small trout cooking over embers, Sarah felt an odd sense of peace despite their circumstances. Taklishim played quietly with pebbles while Nasha wove a small basket from reeds. You have no husband, no children? Nasha asked. Sarah shook her head. Never found the right person, I suppose. In my tribe, woman like you, strong, independent, would be respected. Nasha's eyes held no pity, only understanding. Would be called woman who walks alone but is never lonely. That afternoon, disaster nearly struck. The distant thunder of hooves sent them scrambling to extinguish the fire and hide their belongings. From behind a cluster of boulders, they watched a patrol of 6 soldiers pass less than 50 yards away. "Not searching," Nasha whispered. "Just patrolling." Once the soldiers disappeared, they gathered their things and pressed on, now traveling by day as well, knowing that time was working against them. On the 4th day, crossing a high ridge, Sarah spotted dust trails to the east, multiple riders moving fast. "They've found our trail," she realized aloud. Nasha's face remained impassive, but her eyes revealed concern for her son. "There is another way," she said, "through the canyon. Dangerous, but soldiers no follow there. Why wouldn't they follow?" Sarah asked. "Sacred place. Bad spirits, they think. Apache no better, just difficult path." The decision was made quickly. By midday, they descended into a narrow canyon where sheer walls blocked the sun, creating perpetual twilight. The footing was treacherous with loose rocks and unexpected drops. "Stay close," Nasha instructed, now leading the way confidently. As they navigated the canyon labyrinth, Sarah realized that Nasha had given her something unexpected on this journey, a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. Despite their different worlds, they had formed a bond forged in shared danger and mutual respect. Dawn broke with an eerie stillness. They had emerged from the canyon late the previous night, making camp in a sheltered grove of junipers. Sarah woke first, momentarily disoriented. Something felt different. She scanned their surroundings, then froze. Silent figures stood among the trees. Apache warriors, 15 or more, their faces painted for battle. At their center stood an older man whose bearing suggested authority. Nasha woke and gasped, then spoke rapidly in her language. She approached the older man with deference, gesturing occasionally towards Sarah as she explained their situation. The man, Nasha's uncle and a respected war chief named Delgadito, listened intently. When Nasha finished, he approached Sarah. "My niece says you share corn when she's hungry," he said in surprisingly clear English. "You hide her from blue coats. You risk your life for Apache woman you not know." Sarah stood straighter. She needed help. Anyone would have done the same. Delgadito's weathered face remained impassive. "No, not anyone, especially not white settler woman." He explained that after finding Nasha's message pouch at Sarah's cabin, tracking parties had been searching for them. Meanwhile, other warriors had monitored the cavalry's movements. "Soldiers come," Delgadito stated. "Many, from east and south, looking for you." Sarah's stomach tightened. "How much time do we have?" "Not much, but enough." A hint of something, perhaps respect, flickered in his eyes. "We take you north to trading post where white men fare to Apache. From there you go to your cousin." Before Sarah could respond, a young warrior approached, speaking urgently to Delgadito. "Soldiers closer than we think," Delgadito translated. 2 miles, coming fast. Decisions were made quickly. Most warriors would create diversions to draw the soldiers away. Delgadito, Nasha, and 3 others would escort Sarah and Taklishim. As they prepared to depart, Delgadito raised his hand. The warriors gathered around him. His voice rose in a chant that started low, then grew in intensity. Other voices joined until the sound echoed off the hills, a war cry that seemed to shake the very air. "What are they saying?" Sarah whispered. To Nasha, "They honor you," Nasha replied, eyes glistening. "They say the woman who shared corn when there was little, who offered shelter when there was danger, is now sister to Apache. Her enemies are our enemies. Her journey is our journey." The warriors dispersed like shadows, while Sarah's small group headed north at a punishing pace. By midday, they heard distant gunfire, the diversionary tactics working as planned. That evening, as they made camp, in a hidden valley, Delgadito approached Sarah with a small deerskin bundle. "For you," he said. "Medicine pouch, protection." Inside was a beautifully beaded amulet. "I can't accept," Sarah began. "You already part of story now," Delgadito interrupted. "Story that will be told at Apache fires. About white woman who saw hunger, not enemy. who shared corn, who became sister. 3 days later, they reached the trading post. As promised, the owner, a former Quaker missionary who had long advocated for fair treatment of the Apache, welcomed Sarah and arranged transport to her cousin's home. The parting with Nasha was brief but profound. No words seemed adequate for what they had experienced together. "Different paths now," Nasha said, pressing her forehead to Sarah's in a gesture of deepest respect. "But same sky watches over us." Sarah watched them disappear into the landscape, knowing her life had been irrevocably changed. She had left her homestead behind, but had gained something far more valuable, an understanding that transcended the artificial boundaries between peoples. Years later, settlers in northern territories would sometimes speak of an unusual woman who operated a small trading post on the frontier, who spoke some Apache, and who was, strangely, under the protection of local tribes. Few knew her full story, but the Apache remembered. They still told the tale of how the hills once echoed with war cries for a white woman who had seen the humanity in a starving mother and child and had shared her corn when she had little to spare. In that simple act of kindness, worlds had collided and been forever changed one corn kernel at a time.